The Lord of Times is a crowdfunding project whose goal is to create an epic sci-fi action movie about time travel, a grandiose war in many eras, and the fate of all mankind.
A near future, there is a war between the nations of the Earth. The war in time. People believe that by returning to the past and destroying the ancestors of their enemies, they will develop at a higher rate, and by now will have a decisive advantage over other nations. For this, incredible machines have been developed, chronoplanes, capable of penetrating the tissue of time and being in the past to deal crushing blows that take the lives of thousands of people. Their invulnerable shell could withstand the temperatures and pressures that exist only in the bowels of the stars. The interior of the chronoplane was stuffed with the most sophisticated equipment, among which the pilot half hung in his armchair. His brain was connected to the input of a powerful onboard computer by means of hundreds of contacts implanted in the skull. Mechanisms gave the muscle strength and speed inaccessible to living tissues. Not every person could become the pilot of such a machine. After taking control, the pilot became a part of the computer and all the devices that existed in the chronoplane. Thus, the machine acquired a kind of soul, and the pilot was no longer a man in the usual sense of the word. This symbiosis was necessary to overcome the incredible difficulties of intertemporal transition. To do this, it was necessary to leave our world and to break free into the vastness of the mighty and boundless primary space, a special, yet unknown, substance whose worlds and spaces alternate, and on the waves of which our universe, like billions of other universes, is nothing more than a cork float in a turbulent current, and one of the physical manifestations of which people are accustomed to call time. Gregor was one of these pilots. He drove his deadly machine through spaces, the time in which flowed in different directions, including reversing. Stay in one of these spaces, and allowed him to return 40 centuries ago and back to our world, to find himself in the heyday of the ancient Egyptian civilization, the destruction of which was his goal. Emerging low over the horizon, Gregor's chronoplane, like dazzling point, began to approach the plateau of Giza. The chronoplane, like inexorably, died closer to the goal, enveloped in a white flame. The desert behind him stood on end and ran after him, obscuring the entire horizon and the whole sky. At a speed of 3 times the sound, chronoplane, enveloped in a halo of plasma, swept over the Great Pyramid and soon reached the suburbs of the capital. The chronoplane soared up and dropped the cassette container, from which a few seconds later separated 12 homing nuclear bombs. Among the frenzied sunshine, at first they seemed like a handful of poppy seeds. Looking for their goals, the bombs rushed down the sinister seeds of death, which, as soon as they touched the ground, sprouted, blossomed with fiery flowers, and raised their poisoned crown above the clouds, and around already rushed, burying themselves in the ground, blindly crushing each other, thousands of slaves, warriors, priests, and farmers. After a moment, a flurry of scorching sand and stone and flame struck them. The shockwave passed through the human crowd like a bulldozer knife over an anthill. But now, having connected his mind to the computer, Gregor did not feel pity or regret. Awareness will come later. He still has a difficult way home, in his own time. Each time he returned in his time, Gregor discovered that the world had changed beyond recognition, and not for the better. Nature, cities, and people changed. The only thing that never changed was his beloved, who recognized and remembered him, despite the fact that in a changing world she lived a different life every time. With her, he wanted to remain in peace and tranquility, but, led by debt, he continued time travels. On the instructions of the command, Gregor still has to visit various places and times. He has to carry out not only military but also research, political, and scientific missions. It is planned an incredible story with an epic ending, a lot of dramatic moments. The film will be shot using a large amount of computer graphics. There will be many fighting scenes in different times and spaces. In terms of the scale of events, this will be the most epic film made in the history of cinematography.